Wickham Murray entered the ballroom of the country house wearing a domino over his evening clothes and a black demi-mask. Similarly disguised guests were twirling around the dance floor. The females, a mix of sophisticates and ladies of the night, were garbed in a variety of costumes, their jewels ranging from priceless diamonds to artfully cut pieces of glass. Wick had selected the masquerade for his night's diversion because of the anonymity it offered. He was, at the moment, travelling incognito. As the public face of one of the country's most successful railway companies, Great London Northern Railway, also known as GLNR, he did not wish to be recognised on this trip to Staffordshire. He was on a discreet and vital mission to obtain a tract of land that was the difference between success and failure for his company. Through great expense, GLNR had obtained the necessary Act of Parliament to run a route from London to Manchester. The ambitious venture had gained instant popularity with the investing public, who couldn't get enough of the company's shares, driving up the value. The project had been poised to become GLNR's greatest triumph, until the mistake had been uncovered. While GLNR had been purchasing the necessary territory for the railway for months, a portion of the planned route through Staffordshire had somehow been overlooked. Obtaining that tract of land was turning out to be a surprisingly Herculean challenge. Since Wick handled GLNR's negotiations, his partner, Adam Garrity, managed the company's financial concerns, while his other partner, Harry Kent, was the scientist in charge of research and development. It was up to Wick to get this last but critical piece of the puzzle in place. Wick prided himself on his ability to negotiate outcomes that satisfied both parties. Yet the owner of the land, a prickly and reclusive spinster named Beatrice Brown, was proving to be the most obstinate adversary he'd ever dealt with. He'd sent her multiple generous offers. She'd turned them all down flat. When he'd invited her to London to discuss the matter in person, she'd refused that too, and in a decidedly unfriendly manner. Wick was not one to give up, however. If the mountain would not come to Mohammed... "Hello, love." A purring voice distracted him from his thoughts. "Looking for company this eve?" The woman was dressed as a canary, her voluptuous form barely contained by her skimpy frock dripping with yellow feathers. Her smile was about as genuine as her diamonds, and thus left Wick cold. There'd been a time in his past when he hadn't thought twice about paying for his pleasures. Back then, he'd engaged in other vices too, drinking and gambling, spending money as if it flowed as freely as the Thames. His recklessness had led to his disgrace, to the failures that, even now, caused his chest to tighten in remembered shame. It had taken him a decade to redeem his honour. He'd gotten out of debt, stopped his bad habits, and dedicated himself to his work. Now, at 33, he'd achieved financial success beyond his dreams. From time to time, however, he wanted a respite from his driving ambition, from a life that was busy and rewarding, yet also solitary. Thus, when the innkeeper of the establishment where he was staying had mentioned this infamous masquerade hosted by a local libertine couple, he decided to see it for himself. He'd hoped to find some diversion, even if it was just for the evening, someone who might temporarily fill that restless void inside him. The trouble was that nothing seemed to assuage that strange emptiness. Maybe there was no cure, or maybe he would only know it when he found it. Whatever the case, the canary didn't fit the bill. He made his refusal polite. "Alas, I've just arrived and yet to gain my bearings." "Suit yourself." She moved on, shedding feathers along the way. Wick continued his trek around the ballroom, which replicated the ambiance of a Venetian carnival. Canvas trompe-l'oeil murals hung on the walls, creating an illusion of colourful buildings, canals, and bridges. Beneath the criss-crossing strings of lanterns, jugglers, sword-eaters, and fire-breathers drew oohs and ahs from the guests. Footmen dressed as gondoliers darted through the crowd bearing trays of refreshment.